So last night I had a crazy dream that I drove 20 miles and picked up a van full of stereo equipment. And whoa, oh my God, it really happened. Hey everyone, I'm John with Roadkill Incorporated. Welcome to my series, Retro Resale, where I show you how to become an electronics hoarder and make money doing it. So yeah, I bought 100 pieces of stereo equipment, but I don't know if I should say that excitedly, like it's something to be proud of, or if I should say it like I'm admitting to be an alcoholic at an AA meeting. So I'm into retro computers, I'm not really into stereo equipment, but obviously I could be talked into any quality devices that are cool looking, especially if the price is right. I had a component stereo system back in the day, just like everyone. My all-time favorite being this Technics amplifier I bought as a teenager at Incredible Universe in Oregon for $200. None of this stereo equipment, by the way, is hooked up. I just have it all displayed here because it looks cool. Anyway, Incredible Universe doesn't exist anymore, but it was massive, and it had a room in the back called the Black Hole where they had open box and return items. I saw the Technics sitting high on a shelf, and I remember my dad suggesting buying a much more boring looking new version that came with a box and warranty and all that. But this one looked so technical and very cool, and I knew I wanted it. So I got it, and it worked great, and it had a really great bouncy equalizer and tons of DSP effects. That was a big thing back then, digital signal processors. It was stuck in some mode, some mute mode, so it would only play so loudly, and I didn't have a remote to turn the mode off. So I remember buying magazines on stereo equipment to find a place that sold this remote for it. And yeah, that's the kind of digging you had to do pre-internet if you wanted to find some obscure thing. I remember feeling so relieved turning off that mode and hearing it blast full volume the first time. My only other nostalgic stereo-related memory is as a really young kid. My family was moving to Oregon from California, and my parents were dumping a bunch of their old stuff with our gardeners, who apparently wanted our old stuff. And in that pile, I was surprised to find a reel-to-reel tape recorder that I didn't even know they had. It was a Sony Tapecorder 260. Wow, look at this. These pictures really bring back memories. It's a beautiful device. And this one here apparently sold for $5.95. That is crazy. Anyway, I was fascinated by it, and I talked my parents into keeping it. There was also a box of reel-to-reel tapes, mostly 60s and 70s music my dad probably recorded off of records, but I was surprised to find a tape of me as a baby talking to my parents as well. But wait, there's more. So, years later in high school, my friend Brian from California came to visit for a week. He brought with him a huge case of CDs and a portable Sony Discman. This was my first exposure to CDs, and the case was full of dozens, mostly industrial music, Nine Inch Nails, Front 242, Wire, Nights of Reb, all the bands that would eventually be the basis of my interest in electronic music. My only exposure to music at that time was that I played the piano, and I had no concept of popular music, so I was completely fascinated. Well, Brian always slept until noon, so the whole week I got up early and copied all his CDs to reel-to-reel, copying right over my dad's 70s music. Sorry, Dad. The reel-to-reel died at some point, and I got rid of it, but I've always kept the tapes, and in the back of my mind I thought someday it would be nice to find another reel-to-reel to at least convert the tapes of me as a baby. I've become aware in recent years that stereo equipment and reel-to-reels are part of the retro scene, mostly seeing it on Instagram, but it's not something I know a lot about, and if retro computers are crazy, then this stuff is just absurdly insane. I mean, look at all this. Ultra high-end, mint condition. These guys must be super rich, they must spend their whole lives consumed with seeking all this out. Not that I should talk. Anyway, fast forward to current time, and I'm looking at Facebook Marketplace, as one does, obsessively, all the time. Actually, I try not to look there because every time I do, I happen to find a barn full of computers. Funny how it works that way. And of course, this time I came across this. My eyes went right to the reel-to-reels. Lots of stuff with chrome knobs, too. There's something about chrome knobs. I don't know what it is, the feel of the metal or the perception that it's higher quality than plastic. A lot of it appeared to be in disrepair, but most of it looked workable enough. So, yeah, no way I was going to pay $800, and honestly, I wasn't thrilled with the prospect of dealing with all this stuff since I'd just done some other huge pickups and was still recovering from the post-purchase hangover. So I did what I often do in this situation. I lowballed the seller. I gave him a price that I'd be crazy to not buy at. The idea being that, of course, he's going to say no, or better yet, just not respond at all. And then I can go on my way and forget about it and feel like I made a good effort. And hey, it just didn't work out. So yeah, I threw him a $500 offer. And of course, he said yes. So the place was 30 miles south, and it was night, sort of a sleepy little town. I talked to the guy on the phone before I left, and he wanted me to pay him in advance, which I refused, and which made me a little suspicious of him. Is this a scam? So I was kind of hesitant as I approached the location. I was meeting him at a storage locker where the stuff had apparently been for a long time. The story was, and it probably was a story, that he worked at a stereo repair shop that went under, and this was the remains of years of returns and discarded items and things that just never got repaired or that they never got paid to repair. So, plausible enough, okay, fine, story good enough for me. He said it's all broken, but that seemed just like a general sort of disclaimer. He was a nice enough guy. He was young. He drove a sporty-ish car, lowered a little bit, I think. He said there's good stuff in here, but it's not up to his standard, and he gave the example that his own turntable costs $1,000, which is not good to hear, honestly, because if someone is discerning enough to know that a turntable is worth $1,000, then he probably also knows that this pile is a bunch of crap. But the weird thing was, he left me at the open storage unit, and he told me to text him when I was done, and he just drove away and left me there. For half a second, I was offended he didn't offer to help me load up, but then again, it's probably easier to not have to make conversation, and so yeah, I got started. There were so many layers of stuff in the storage unit. There was way more than it looked like in the pictures, and it was heavy. I hadn't driven down there thinking about getting a workout, but I was getting a severe workout. Well, I'm only a third of the way through, and the van is half full, so pretty crazy. And I didn't have enough carpet padding to pad the stuff properly, and I needed to make a few layers in the van. There was just so much of it. One reel-to-reel fell out of the van on its face and got dented, so I spent half the time being disgusted about that, and I spent the other half the time feeling a little bit spooked out. I mean, I was alone unloading a storage locker in the dark under a streetlight. Was a gang of thugs going to appear suddenly and take it all from me? It didn't feel impossible. So yeah, I was definitely relieved to get back in the van and hit the lock button and drive off, and I felt better the further I got, and hey, eventually I passed a pump and munch, and there's nothing that tells you you're back in civilization like when you pass a pump and munch. So I got home, I went to bed, I didn't touch the van for a week. Sometimes a van is its own kind of storage unit, and as such it can be pretty easily ignored. Alright, the moment is here. You've been waiting patiently for me to shut up and show you the stuff. Well, I'm not going to shut up, but I will show you the stuff. It's stacked up pretty nicely. Of course, everyone online says the bottom items will get crushed, but people who've never stacked things don't really realize how that works. So the big pile is about 60% of it, and the rest I'll show you soon. If you want a slow look at all the faceplates, I'll put that at the end in the bonus section. But yeah, I'd say about 40% of it is definitely damaged. As far as categories, it's mostly amplifiers, some tape decks, some CD players, some 8-tracks, some record players. Without having checked, I assume the media players are probably worth the most, since they aren't making those anymore. Nobody makes a tape recorder, but they still do make amps. Interesting to see combo 8-track record players. I didn't know that was a thing. There are some dedicated AM/FM tuners and equalizers. There's an ancient video camera and a giant second component you have to lug around. Kind of like an old version of the Apple Vision Pro. You have the camera part and then another piece that's on a cable. Hey look, here's another of my Technics amp. Now I have two. Yet more stuff, VCRs, DVD players. I actually grew up with this tape deck and lost it along the way somewhere, but now I have it back and it looks great. various small reel-to-reels, a few large bins of small amplifiers like for PA systems, toy record players, a Behringer mixer and a Newmark USB DJ controller which I sold, lots of really old tape recorders. By the way they're set up, I get the impression early tape recorders were for dictation and not music. Of the 7 or 8 reel-to-reels, these 3 are the nicest, and they're all working. Clearly they aren't the extreme high-end Instagram ones, but to my ears, they're perfect. Bet you've never heard Frontline Assembly coming out of a 50-year-old reel-to-reel. I'm playing it backwards, so hopefully the algorithm won't catch me. So I created an index of all the main items if you're interested. I can't possibly test everything for this video, but I do want to try this small pile that I'm most curious about. Alright, here we go. Techniques. Powers on. Tape decks open. Slowly, but they open. Techniques amp works. Input select works. Amp of my childhood powers on. Kenwood works as well. Powers on. Input select. Yeah, seems to work. And the Pioneer 6-disc powers on as well. And what a bonus, it ejects. So here's the real fun, the 8-track tape recorders. Got the Cars here. Will it play? And it's interesting, they power on and start going automatically, and it does play. Look at that meter. And the eject button kicks it right out. Next we'll try sticks. Will the Sound Design quadraphonic player work? Okay, it's the moment of truth. Will it play? Yes, it plays. Incredible. Both 8-track players play tapes. This one's only using one of its 4 quads, or quadraphones, not sure. I guess you use this lever to maneuver between them. But wow, incredibly good results from a bunch of devices I took straight off the pile. eBay tells me that people do buy this stuff, but not too often. The main problem is there's nothing particularly valuable here. The best of what I have sells around $100, and then there's shipping. So without standout items like that $1,000 turntable, this lot is a bit of a grind to deal with. I can see why someone would want to dump it, or why it would accumulate in a repair store. But on the other hand, this stuff is just cool. I find myself having no desire to sell the nicer items, and I really like the idea of a stereo wall in my house, just for the look of it, just for the aesthetics and the sculptural, artistic satisfaction. I'll stare at my wall and I'll play my actual music on a $100 Sonos speaker, because my ears are shot and stereo sound, let alone high quality sound, barely does anything for me. The brutal truth here is that this gear was made for people whose ears haven't been demolished by decades of earbuds, and component stereos just don't fit technologically or physically into the modern audio paradigm, which is basically a phone, or at best a small invisible appliance. But there's something to be said for quality, something to be said for the look and design of sophisticated electronics that were meant to be seen, that were meant to have identity, and not be invisible. Okay, down to the money. So I haven't sold much. I've sold about 20 small amps because they're easy to deal with mainly, averaging about $20 each. I sold the Behringer and the Newmark, and oddly enough I sold about 6 of these little guys, whatever the heck they are, for $100, and I have quite a few left. So I've already made my money back, and there's clearly at least 30 to 40 other items that would sell for $40 to $80 conservatively, so potentially we could triple or quadruple the money. But it's also much work, so much labor. That's the thing. And the broken stuff, well, I'll probably dump that in a large lot, a mini version of what I bought from the other guy. I'm guessing it would be a challenge to get $100 for the worst third of it, and the person who buys it for that is probably a scrapper. What's my final analysis? It's not exactly a money proposition, but it was definitely a fun experience. Oh, wait, we're not quite done yet. I just got a message from the guy, the seller. It looks like he has another lot. Oh, God. And, I'm just getting a handle on this one, and now there's more. Look at this. Tons more. More reel-to-reels, more amps, more chrome. So what do I do here? I guess I'll lowball him again. I'm sure he wants the same $500 I paid last time, probably. So, I don't know. I'll offer him $300? but fortunately, this time I got no response. What a relief. Thanks for watching.